This video is on solving equations with fractions. All of the examples and the we-dos practice problems should be copied down on your note sheet. Before we start learning how to solve equations with fractions, let's review complex fractions because this is going to be helpful when we're solving equations with fractions. So first remember that complex fractions are fractions within fractions. So here's an example. 16 thirds over 2 thirds. We have a fraction in the numerator and a fraction in the denominator. So remember, we just use our knowledge of dividing fractions. This is written vertically up and down, so I can just write it horizontally left to right. So this is the same as 16 thirds divided by 2 thirds. And then remember, my rule for dividing fractions is keep, change, flip. So I keep my first fraction, change division to multiplication, and then flip or take the reciprocal of 2 thirds, which is 3 halves. And now I can multiply fractions, so I can multiply straight across. 16 times 3 I know is 48, and then 3 times 2 I know is 6. 48 divided by 6 I know is 8. So remember, complex fractions is really just dividing fractions where we can do keep, change, flip. Next, let's review the distributive property. The distributive property is something you should have learned in 6th grade, but let's just do a quick review. So here are 2 examples. The one in purple, we read it as 3 times the quantity of x plus 2. When we distribute, we take the number on the outside and then we give it or multiply it to both of the values or whatever's inside the parentheses. So 3 times the quantity of x plus 2 is the same as 3 times x, I know is 3x, and then 3 times 2, the positive 2, so I can see it as plus 2. So 3 times 2 I know is 6, so plus 6. So 3 times the quantity of x plus 2 is the same as 3x plus 6. And then let's take a look at our example in orange, negative 5 times the quantity of m plus 8. So here we have a negative value. Still the same idea. I do negative 5 times m, which I know is negative 5m. And then let me switch colors. I do negative 5 times this positive 8. I can read it as plus 8, positive 8. I know that negative 5 times 8, negative times a positive is negative, so negative 40. And then when I write it, since it's negative 40, I'm just going to write it as minus 40. So negative 5 times the quantity of m plus 8 is the same as negative 5m minus 40. So this is a review of the distributive property. So here are the steps for solving equations with fractions. The steps should sound a little bit familiar once you get to step 2 and 3. These should be copied down. Pause the video if you need to. Step 1 is to distribute if necessary. You do that when you see parentheses. Step 2, get rid of the constant by adding or subtracting. Step 3, divide by the coefficient, simplify if necessary. Again, copy down steps 1, 2, and 3 on your note sheet. Okay, so here's we do number 1. 2 thirds x minus 1 equals 5. Again, this should be copied down on your note sheet. I see that I don't have to distribute. That was step 1. I know I don't have to distribute because I don't see any parentheses. Step 2, get rid of the constant by adding or subtracting. Here I see my constant is this minus 1. So I know that the opposite of subtracting 1 is adding 1, so I add 1 to both sides of my equal sign. And then if I look here, the minus 1 plus 1, they cancel out, so I can cross it out, and then I bring down my 2 thirds x, bring down my equal sign. 5 plus 1 I know is 6. So now we're at 2 thirds x is equal to 6. This is saying that 2 thirds times a number, x, which is what we're trying to figure out, is equal to 6. So the opposite of multiplying by 2 thirds is dividing by 2 thirds. So I divide both sides by 2 thirds. These will cancel out and just leave me with x. And then if I take a look here on my right side, it's a complex fraction. There's a fraction in the denominator. So 6 divided by 2/3, I'm just going to rewrite it horizontally. And remember, if it's just a whole number, it has a 1 as a denominator. So 6 over 2/3 is the same as 6 over 1. Again, 6 over 1 divided by 2/3. And remember, I can do keep, change, flip. So I keep my first fraction, change division to multiplication, and flip my second fraction. Then I can multiply across. 6 times 3 I know is 18. 1 times 2 is 2. 18 over 2, or 18 divided by 2, simplified, is 9. So for we do number 1, x equals 9. Let's take a look at we do number 2. 2/3 times the quantity of m minus 2 equals 4. Again, step 1 is to distribute if necessary. I know I have to distribute because I see the parentheses. So let's go ahead and distribute. So 2/3 times m, I know is 2/3 m. And then let me just draw a squiggly line to show some of my work off to the side. Then I can distribute 2/3 times this. It says minus 2 and I can see it as negative 2. So off to the side I'm going to do 2/3 times negative 2. Then remember, if it's just a whole number as a fraction, it's always over 1. So it's 2/3 times negative 2 over 1. And then I can multiply across. 2 times negative 2 I know is negative 4. And then 3 times 1 I know is 3. So negative 4/3. When I write it back over here, I write it as minus 4/3 because it's negative 4/3, so minus 4/3 equals 4. So now we have 2/3 m minus 4/3 equals 4. So our second step is to get rid of the constant by adding or subtracting. Here, even though our constant's not a whole number, now it's a fraction. So the opposite of subtracting 4/3 is adding 4/3. So I add 4/3 to both sides. This will cancel out because negative 4/3 plus 4/3 will give me 0. So bring down my 2/3 m. And then on my, that'll be plus 4/3. On my right side, I have to do 4 plus 4/3. So on the side with my squiggly line, I'm just going to show my work. So now I have to use my knowledge of adding fractions. So this is 4 over 1 plus 4/3. Then remember, when I add fractions with unlike denominators, I have to find the least common denominator. Between here, it's 1 and 3, which would be 3. So 1 times 3 I know is 3, so 4 times 3 I know is 12. 3 times 1 I know is 3, so 4 times 1 I know is 4. Then I can add, since they have the same denominator. 12 plus 4 is 16, and I keep my denominator, so 16/3. So now I have 2/3 m is equal to 16/3, and so now I know I can divide by my coefficient, which is 2/3. So I divide by 2/3, and I get m equals, and then I'm just going to rewrite my complex fraction. So it becomes 16/3 divided by 2/3, and that's the same as, remember I can do keep, change, flip. So keep my first fraction, change division to multiplication, and then flip my second fraction, and then multiply across. 16 times 3 I know is 48. 3 times 2 is 6. 48 divided by 6 I know simplifies to 8. So for we do number 2, m equals 8.